Today is Thursday, September 24th, and this is our weekly developer check-in meeting. Before we get started, we're going to go around and do introductions, but I just wanted to say that we know Nate's not here and he will be joining us a little later. So we're, after that, going to go to the bottom of the agenda and start with the Q&A discussion section until Nate gets back. So Tim, let's start with introductions.
Sorry, my name is Tim, St. Paul Tim on the internet. I am coming from Deerwood, Minnesota. The only thing I think I'm going to say in introductions is that I'm recovering from Backdrop Live last weekend and starting to get ready for Open Source Day next week, when we're going to hopefully have some new folks in our issue queue helping us out for at least a day, and maybe we can convince a few of them to come back. That's it. Gregory.
Hi, my name is Greg. I'm usually in Australia, Melbourne, Australia, but now I'm joining from Greece. Interested in Backdrop in general, and I will, just to see how I can help. Also recovering from Backdrop Live. Jason.
Hi, I'm Jason. I'm from Las Vegas, Nevada. I'm back in developer. I'm just kind of, in general, trying to help make things not suck.
And I am Jen Lampton, calling from Oakland, California. And yeah, I'm looking forward to talking about the future. So before we move on to discussion, I just want to say a couple of things. We have 2 new contributors in the application queue with a port of the rules once per day module and a port of the ZERB 2020 theme. So I wanted to do a quick thank you to Bugfolder and DJ Zwerg, I believe, for working on those projects. Hopefully we'll get both of those projects reviewed by the end of the day. I did one of them this morning, the other one's half done with. And then,
Jen,
yes?
Before we proceed, can you please provide a link to the agenda?
Oh, that would be nice. Okay,
Thanks.
I'm putting a link to the agenda and the Zoom link in the Zulip channel in the weekly meetings stream. Sorry about that. All right, contributed projects this week. There's a new module, the CiviSerum cron module was released. I also wanted to say a quick thank you to BW Panda, who has been working tirelessly for like the last 2 years on the Form API page on the Backdrop API site. And when he first mentioned it, I'm like, this is crazy. This is way too much work. Nobody would ever want to do this. And he's been plowing forward with it for forever. And he's really close. He's got it to the point where they're just ready to enter content. So yeah, a huge thanks for the continued commitment to getting that done. I find it really impressive. Okay, let's move to Q&A. And Tim brought us a question.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly bring up meta issues and how we're using them. And I'll just quickly, my intro is right. I think of a meta issue as usually a high level issue with a lot of sub issues. And we were talking about Gregory before he got online, because I just ran into a couple of meta issues that you've created that really are just sort of high level discussions of an issue, which is appropriate, but don't have any like child links in them yet. And like I came to one of those, I think related to the date stuff, and you had this meta issue with like 20 screenshots in it. And I'm like, I'm not sure if this is where I should, like if I should create a new meta. I want a meta issue for these sub issues. And I don't, so yeah, I don't know. And also I just want to ask, I have in the last probably 2 months spent time updating some meta issues that like had a whole bunch of things that weren't listed, and I find them useful. I still like having them, and I'm willing to put time into them, but I don't know, I'm curious if other people are using them.
Yeah, so meta issues can come to life in various ways. Either you have a plan, you have a discussion, and then you know that there's subtasks, so you create a parent issue, so to speak, to sort of like coordinate the rest of the issues, or you start off an issue without it being a meta, but the discussion moves so far along, and there's so many ideas or things mentioned that you convert that into a meta and then split off of separate tasks. So where manageable tasks can be discussed and separate pull requests can be made for different sections. And I guess maybe sometimes the initiative, if they have an issue, they might need to be meta issues.
I don't
The
think
other
I've
way
ever
that,
seen a
yeah,
meta
sorry,
issue. Go ahead.
yeah, go ahead. Sorry. The other way that this can be born is that if you have like different people raising issues about a similar subject, but different things, like improving a similar aspect of Backdrop or a similar or the same page, then in order to have a sense of how sort of like to coordinate those things, you create a meta and you link those tickets off. So a person might come, create a ticket, and then after a few months, another person, and then over the years, a lot of issues about the same thing get gathered, I guess, into a meta. So that's my understanding of how things work. Sorry if I'm making life harder by the metas that I create.
No, I think it's great. I was gonna say, I don't think I've ever seen a meta issue that doesn't have child issues.
I'll
But
point to one.
how those issues come about can be any possible format. Like it could have started as one issue and then we realized it's actually 10. Or it could just be one that turns into 2. Like it doesn't have to have any given like amount of child issues. It's just like if there's one thing where you want a whole bunch of different things done and it's really hard to do them all in one issue, it's much easier to make smaller issues, but you want to keep them all kind of grouped together. That's the general idea. And I think
Yeah,
if you find one that doesn't have child issues in the issue, it could be that those child issues are mentioned in the comments and we just need a little like cleanup to make it clear why it's a meta. Or it could have been something that started as a meta and eventually morphed into not a meta, and maybe just meta was never removed from the title.
or a third thing could be that we knew what tasks needed to be sort of like sub issues needed to be created, but we didn't get to creating them. We have the bullet points, but no issues for them, which is to be done. That's another case. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's look at a specific example.
Yeah, sure.
2653. It's making basis work better as an admin theme. It's defined as a meta issue, but really it seems more like a broad discussion about like how to do this. There are no child issues. And basically I wanted to add a child issue to it, but it feels like it's not the right place to do it. So I'm just wondering.
Can you please repeat the number?
2653. 2653.
Yep.
I put a link in Zulip if that's helpful for anyone.
Sure. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So this is a meta issue because make the entire basis look and work properly is like a lot of aspects. So we might need to tackle one page at a time in a different.
Right. But to me, so it has too much information in the summary to be useful as a meta, because like, where do I put my link? And if I do, is anybody going to see it?
Yeah, sure. So what we can do is when I put the screenshots there, but we can remove the screenshots if you create separate tickets for them. So feel free to just create tickets in place of the screenshots and move the screenshots to that other issue that you create.
Okay.
That's one suggestion, but feel free to,
It looks like this is a meta with all of the sub issues currently in it rather than, so it's not really a meta. It's just like, I have a lot of complaints. Which is fair.
Yeah, which is how metas, well, a way for metas to be born. Yeah.
Sure. So I think, part of my question is, do I maybe create a new meta and transfer this into something else, or do I take this over and make it into
whichever, we trust you.
Okay.
It would be good to summarize each one of those things into like a few words rather than leaving it in the current state and then linking the words from here to the other one.
Sure.
So yeah, like this reads right now like a thought, like an experience, and that's useful from the I don't know, understanding perspective, but from the solutions perspective, it's hard. So yeah, feel free to rework however you think works best.
Okay. Any other comments just on like, because there are some of our meta issues that are pretty far out of date, and I mean, that's okay, but I just want to make sure that like people still like meta issues and they want to keep them up to date. So I'm not wasting my time when I do update them.
No, I think they're really helpful to help just in terms of organization. We don't have any other way to really represent hierarchy.
Right.
And so I think, whatever people feel helps them stay organized in a meta is allowed. So there's no real strict rule so much as like that tag is supposed to indicate there's a bunch of stuff going on here and there should be links to other things inside. And that's kind of it.
Like recently I did the blocks meta. I knew that there was about 8 or 10 issues that weren't linked to it. So I just spent a half an hour linking, adding a bunch of sub issues to that. And I find that helpful.
There's sometimes that we miss, people are not aware of the existence of the meta issues, so they create tickets. So it's left to some of us to go and link it. At some point, since you mentioned if we need to add a comment, at some point we discussed about using GitHub projects. Are you aware of what that is?
Yep.
Okay, but some metas are not as big to sort of qualify for projects, and that's what I wanted to say. Nate is here, by the way.
Yep.
Hey Nate, we started the agenda from the bottom up, waiting for you.
Okay. Yeah, I'll add that I also really appreciate meta issues, just the way that we aggregate and use them. Even though it's somewhat tedious to collect the things inside of them, if you're interested in a particular topic, it's a really great way to see, like, here's everything related to layouts, for example. I really like them. Because the alternative would be like we use tags or projects, and projects I think has kind of been a bust. Like our use of them, GitHub projects is like, it's like a Trello board. I haven't had a lot of success with them. And then tags, we don't want to inflate the tag list for like every single meta that we could possibly have. So meta issues, I think, are our best solution for organizing large groups of issues.
Another thing that might help, Tim, is that metas start as a sort of like way to organize or improve a specific section. And if that is in a bad shape, and if we get that in a good shape, then it may not any longer make sense to keep the meta open. We just close the meta, we say we've done most of these things, and then we don't need to keep, adding things to that. Then we can file separate issues. So you can identify that if you see within a short period of time, people raising issues about the same aspect, like a new feature that was introduced and they have follow-up issues, for example, things like that. So yeah, I think it organically sort of like evolves to a helpful tool.
Okay.
All right, so if you're saying that we started from the bottom up,
As in discussions.
okay, what
We've
is
done the QA.
meta issues? Okay,
Yes.
got it. Have you done the
We did
community
everything
updates?
to core issues.
Okay, do you want to do the core update? Would you like to proceed to the core update? That's what I meant.
Yes.
I would like
Okay.
you to proceed to the core update.
That's what I meant. Yeah. All right. Well, let's start going over that then. It's kind of tradition that I read through this section. I'll preface this a little bit. Did we already celebrate Backdrop Live? Because I think we should take a minute to do that then. So yay, we had our first online conference event, our first exclusive Backdrop event probably ever. It wasn't associated with any other camp or conference or anything. Tim, do you want to say any words in particular?
Well, no, except 48 hours of virtual goodness, 65 participants or 65 registrations. Not everyone showed up, but we raised like $1,300 in fees or in donations. And a lot of good discussions.
Yeah, I think it was a smash. It was so great. We brought in a lot of people that we don't see regularly or that we've never seen at all. Like, I think we expanded our community reach quite a bit. We generated a lot of buzz on social media. We generated a lot of new content that got published to our YouTube channel. Most of the recordings or most of the sessions were not recorded because they were in a discussion format that allowed free conversation to occur without penalty. But the ones that were presentations are recorded and posted to our YouTube channel. And it was just great. Oh, and it was really excellent for the people that we do frequently see, just to get together and hash out some very specific problems. So these weekly meetings can be a little rote sometimes, and there's not enough time to really deep dive anything, let alone like 10 things. And Backdrop Live gave us those opportunities to really look at individual topics as a team and have people come in and really have an extended conversation about those things.
Yeah, also
So-
time zone. Also time zone. Yeah, we got
Yeah.
to see people that cannot join the weekly meetings due to time zone constraints.
Yep. So talk about a hit. Backdrop Live was super awesome. So so we had Backdrop Live this past weekend, and then a week before that we had, or in the weekdays before Backdrop Live, we also had the release of Backdrop 1.17. So it's been action-packed the past couple of weeks with getting releases, getting the final bug fixes out, conference planning, and then actually executing the conference. So yeah, I think all of that is to say that the updates in the core land actually aren't really like where the effort has been, but we can go over those updates nonetheless. So 1.17 is our current version of Backdrop, and the next bug fix release will be 1.17.1. Oh man, there's just so much activity that happened. We also released a public service announcement to the security page of backdropcms.org that notified that there was a security release of Drupal on September 16th. And we intentionally did not release a corresponding version of Backdrop, even though a new version of Drupal 7 came out. Almost always we coordinate. We actually did coordinate, but we release simultaneously within the same day, at least, a version of Backdrop for every version of Drupal that has a security update. We intentionally did not make a Backdrop release because it was the day after 1.17 came out. And forcing a security update or an alarming notification on every Backdrop website saying you have to update right after 1.17 came out would be putting a lot of pressure on our users that we didn't want them to feel like they should upgrade to 1.17 right away, when at the same time we just released it and we weren't 100% certain that there weren't unknown upgrade issues. So the public service announcement says that we'll be doing the 1.17.1 release on September 30th. Which is great because that's within the 2-week window, that we usually fix any issues that have happened in the current release, and then we make a bug fix release with those addressed. So the September 30th release 1.17.1 will be on September 30th, and it will have a security update in it. So all of these things are known and posted, just recapping all of the activity. Anyway, so that means that we have these issues to be addressed.
Clarification. Yeah, I think you just said this pretty clear, but I want to repeat it to be absolutely. So sometimes I think in security releases, you don't want to include bug fixes. This will have both, right?
Yeah, and we, I'm actually not sure if it's policy, but almost all security releases also have bug fixes in them in Backdrop. It's only if by pure coincidence that we've had a bug fix release, nothing else has been committed, and then we make a security release. That's the only time that an issue or a release only has security issues, and it's pure coincidence. Security updates in Backdrop always include all of the bug fixes and the security update.
Okay, maybe I'm thinking of a Drupal thing or something else, so I misunderstood.
Yeah, there was an experiment in the world of Drupal briefly where they released 2 versions every time a security update came out, but they stopped doing that because it was too confusing. Like, why are 2 new versions of Drupal coming out on Wednesdays? It was just it was strange.
Got it.
So 1.17.1 is the next version of Backdrop. It'll be coming out September 30th. And we have these issues that we could potentially pursue in that time frame. So first one up is transliteration does not respect the site default language. It's issue 2637. It currently needs code review, but has been marked works for me and has test coverage. and looks like it's in really good shape. Indigo Zella posted 3 days ago, politely saying the pull request has been updated and it's ready for another review. So that one is in good shape. We added a new feature in 1.17 that allows you to put descriptions and titles on the administrative interface. When you place a block, you can customize what is shown on the administrative interface to represent that block. And issue 4600 is an issue that just cleans up the labels and descriptions on the fields for labels and descriptions. So it's just slight terminology tweaking and help text changes to make that more clear. It currently needs review and testing, but it's really just string changes. Let's see, the site gets stuck in maintenance mode sometimes when updating modules using the UI. This issue is 3956. Currently has needed review for quite some time, 3 weeks now. Currently still needs review and testing. Setting a reasonable value for max input var is a PHP setting. This issue is 3824. This includes a status report page update saying that potentially your PHP configuration may cause problems with Backdrop. It sets a warning and it links off to a documentation page. This issue, 3824, is now RTBC. Let's see, a usability improvement is the next one, removing the block title for the search box. That if you place a search block on the page, it currently has a label on the field and it has a title on the block and it has a button, all of which say search. So the search block currently says search, search, search. And the enhancement is that we'll remove the label from the field and from the block title and leave it on the button. It's issue 3476. It currently has been marked works for me and needs a code review. You're noticing kind of a recurring pattern here is that we need code reviews.
Yeah, we've been busy with that Backdrop Live thing and not much time to do that, to focus on the queue.
Yeah, these next 4, I don't think have any updates. So I'm going to just read their summaries as a reminder that we're working on them. There's an issue with the views or behavior that doesn't work quite as expected. That's issue 3415. Removing the words blacklist and whitelist from core, issue 4441. We haven't had any updates on that issue. And the similar issue, remove all master and slave terminology from core, 4451. Both of those issues have had a couple of caveats that have made that a little bit more difficult than we expected. It's possible that we might start splitting them out into like the easy part and the hard part, just to make it so that we can move forward with the changes that are easily made. Next up, 3213, adding automated code checks using PHP CS. There hasn't been any updates in the issue for a while, but I think that there's been issues happening over in the coder module, coder upgrade module. I can't remember which coder module it's in. But some modest progress is coming along in that area as well, though it's not in the issue, so I don't actually have a lot to convey verbally. Last up is using Tugboat QA for pull request sandboxes. This one, most interestingly, is marked fixed, but I haven't seen a pull request that's used it yet. Gregory, have you noted any change in the sandbox behavior?
No, I haven't. We're still using ZenCI. I think there's something that needs to be done on your end. Last I recall, I think we need to decide whether we're gonna set up a separate account for the PRs or require talk to the tugboat team to give us more space if needed. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I remember that it was waiting on something from me.
Okay, yeah, I see. Hang on, there's a follow-up issue. Oh no. There's an additional comment. So the code is merged into core, like you say, but we haven't done the corresponding setup on Tugboat side. I did notice that when I updated the backdrop demos site to 117, that we actually had a conflict because now there was a Tugboat directory in core itself, and the Tugboat demos directory demo site also has a Tugboat directory, and so we had a merge conflict. But for the time being, I just removed that from the Tugboat demos repository. It's still in the actual backdrop core repository, but yeah, there's some additional work that needs to be done there. But it's exciting.
Yeah,
I think that BW Panda did all of the work on his own site with his own Tugboat account and had it all fully working. So
yep.
it's the core changes are made, and we just need to like finalize the connection. I bet we have to set up the GitHub hook too to like fire off to Tugboat.
Peter also provided instructions on how people could test it on their own fork of Backdrop, so they can do it with their own Tugboat account. And one thing to note is that we need the separate account or the separate repo, I guess, because the Tugboat account that we use on the main site is configured so that Tugboat sandboxes are being destroyed after 24 hours, but we don't need that for PRs. We need them to be more persistent.
Yep. I'll post a comment first of all, but I'll also reach out to Tugboat and see if we can get either a second comped account or if our current account can be increased. Because right now we cap out at 40 gigabytes and we have exceeded that at times when we have more than 200 sandboxes. That was mostly an error in which sandboxes had not been getting cleaned up properly. Now that they're getting cleaned up properly, so we're well with under that 40 gigabyte limit. But with sandboxes, of which we have hundreds of sandboxes, I have a feeling that we may legitimately start consuming kind of a large volume of space. So, okay, well, I'll reach out to Tugboat and I'll also take a look at this issue to see what integration we need on the Backdrop side and on the Tugboat side. I think that once we get this working, what that'll mean is that for a while, we may have 2 sandboxes on every pull request, which I think is fine while we're getting that worked out.
I have a related question because I recently, in the past day, have discovered a few issues that creeped up. We fixed an issue, a long-standing issue where when you selected a module to be installed via the project installer, the step where it allows you to enable it would only list the main module and not its submodules. So we fixed that. And if you have errors set to be shown, there's a few notices. It doesn't break anything, but there's a few PHP notices that are thrown. So the idea was, should we enable, first of all, let me ask the question. It's my impression that for the PR sandboxes, we are using a sort of like a fixed, like pre-built database. Is that correct? To speed things up? Or does it get built from scratch? Sorry, you muted me.
I believe that Sandboxes actually run the installer.
Okay, cool.
Even on Zen CI.
I know that this might interfere with PRs that work on the error messages, but I would like us to have somehow automate enabling PHP errors and notices on PRs so that when people test, they actually see them and report them as part of the whole process of fixing that issue. Mm-hmm. But if the issue being worked on has to do with error messages, I know how this could interfere if the issue expects that setting to be disabled. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, well, that I think that's fine because our sandboxes are not the same as our testing infrastructure. That we can have PHP errors and notices like turned on in the sandboxes, but not turned on
the
testing,
testing.
infrastructure, and that's
Yeah.
no problem. But that's a good point that conceivably, if we had something that needed to be tested, that could cause some confusion, like in the manual testing related to error
Yes, exactly.
messages. But I think overall that's kind of a minor like edge case for something that's not even automated. It's for like the human testing. We could just put a note in there and say, hey, other humans, note, errors are going to be
Yes.
turned on.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's yeah, we could either, like you say, like run an additional task like on it, or we have to set up a settings.php file specifically for Tugboat to use or the sandbox
Yeah.
to use. Now that we have config overrides, we could just always
Yes.
turn them on in settings.php.
Yeah, that was my thought.
Yeah, I think that settings.php approach is the most obvious and straightforward way to proceed. I think that we should take that approach once we have the sandboxes.
Yeah. So do we have a separate repo for such things so I can open an issue about it? Is it the main GovCMS? So
For it would
So I
be it'll be in the main backdrop issues repo or
Okay.
issue queue right now, because the Tugboat integration for backdrop for the sandboxes is in core right now. It's literally a directory in core.
And also the use the Tugboat for PR sandboxes issue, which we were discussing now, is against the backdrop issues queue. So I'm gonna file it there. So
Yep.
okay, cool. All right. Yeah.
All right. That's all of the updates for 117.1. Some of these, like they'll take more work than we'll be able to do in the next week, but a good chunk of those early ones will probably get completed. And of course, there's always the 117.1 milestone in GitHub, which has 64 issues in it currently. So there's lots of items to be prioritizing for the release that comes out next week. 118 will be the next minor version of Backdrop, and right now it's kind of like a blue sky, like open book for us to pursue new objectives in 118. We will probably use this meeting next week to specifically discuss 118 items, and that's kind of an open discussion format where we all come in with crazy ideas and talk about which ones we should prioritize. But the mechanism that we use for deciding 118 features is still the same, that you can't just come into the meeting and say, I think we should do that, and then we'll focus our attention on it. We still need issue advocates to be prioritizing minor issue or minor release features. So the discussion is great, and you might encourage someone to be an advocate or decide to be an advocate during that issue. But things for 118 still require advocates, just someone to take that issue and move it forward. Just keep an eye on it and encourage other people to work on it. Be a person ready to test and review changes as they come through. So the only items that we have for 118 so far are this first one, MySQL 8 support 4238. This issue, actually, there's been some discussion about putting it into a bug fix release. We have had multiple users now try out the pull request that is currently available for MySQL 8 support and confirm it working, and so far, no regressions have been posted. So there's been some muttering about putting it into a bug fix release rather than a minor version, primarily because the current version of Red Hat, CentOS, and if you install MySQL on Ubuntu or Debian, Ubuntu and Debian use MariaDB by default, and they don't have the same incompatibility. But if you do install MySQL on this latest version of pretty much any Linux operating system, MySQL 8 is now the default, and Backdrop does not work with it, and that's a bad look. So we might not want to wait a full 4 months before we add MySQL 8 compatibility, just because this is kind of a critical issue.
Yeah.
It is marked as a bug, but it's also like has the potential to break things. So,
And there is a user in the issue queue that is pretty active, and he's using a host that uses that. So he's blocked, but he will also be able to provide testing if we do it soon, like throughout the cycle until the next minor.
yep. I think it would be unwise of us to rush it into the security update that's coming out a week from now. But there's a good chance that we may reach a decision that it's safe enough to put into 1.17.2.
Is the PR, does the PR include changes that might break things for previous MySQL versions, or is it specific only if, like, do we do detection? I can't remember.
It affects all installations of Backdrop. They
Okay,
all
cool.
receive the change. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it could affect non-MySQL 8 versions of Backdrop as well.
Yeah.
Maybe this is a crazy idea, but if this is that, if it has that potential, and if it is also something we want to get in sooner, would it be helpful to have sort of a preview type release to make it easier for some of us to test it, like to drop it into existing sites and see if it breaks anything? And maybe we don't need to do a full preview release, but at least provide good instructions for some people who might not know how to. I mean, really, all you need to do is clone that branch, right?
Yeah, and if you use Lando for your testing on your local, you can configure Lando to install MySQL 8 before you fire it up. So we can provide instructions for that or ddev.
Also, Indigo Zala provided some instructions to domain good in that issue 4238, and used a trick I didn't know existed, which is you can go to the pull request and then add .zip to the end of it, and it will download an archive of that branch instead of needing to use Git at all. You can actually just download a whole archive, which I'd never seen before.
Also, .pats works. If you do .pats, it outputs it as a pats thing. Fine.
But I'm right, and I'm thinking it's one thing to like spin up a new site using Backdrop or using that patch and a new database, but I'm thinking to make it easy for somebody to add to an existing site and test it, because I have a few sites I could do that for, and I'm sure I can figure out how to do that testing. But if this is that sort of critical and we want more eyes on it, it might be helpful to like ask for that help and explain to people exactly how to do it.
It would also be good to test on non-MySQL 8 databases to make sure it doesn't break existing, MySQL 7 or whatever else.
I think that's where I was going.
All our PR sandboxes are non-8, are using MySQL. What was it?
But are they actually doing an install or just running through the tests?
No,
or is that both?
Oh, I think they ran the full installer.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there is something going on, but it would still be good to verify that.
Yeah.
Nothing weird is happening.
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay. Let's see. We've got a couple more issues still, but we're bumping up against time. So add WebP support is issue 4509. WebP is a new image format that is an alternative to JPEGs. And I have not seen this issue prior to today, but it looks like Lauren is heading up this particular initiative. It has a pull request, and it currently is marked as needs code review and testing. Looks like Indigo Zala added tests. Need sign off from core committers. So yeah, this looks like it's in really good shape. I have only just now seen this issue, so I can't really elaborate on more than that. Next up is merge the update core or module or theme or layout pages onto a single page. I remember this issue from quite some time back. Gregory, are you pushing forward this issue again?
Yeah, yes, I would like actually to advocate for that, because there's a few tickets that recently came out, like the dashboard block that includes the available updates. So there's confusion all over the place. The links link to, like, say there's an update for a module, but when you click it, it lists everything. So we need to fix it. It's been a confusion for like many versions now. Let's just get it done.
Will this remove the tab from the themes page and the modules page that says update modules, update themes?
Yeah, so that's a discussion that we're currently having. So we should keep the reports page as a reports page and the reports available updates. And then we're thinking about moving the actual updating under somewhere like configuration system updates or something, which is where you can actually perform the action of updating rather than getting a report of what needs updating or has available updates. And the other sort of like argument there is like, why have two pages? Can't we have a single page where you get the report and also can do the action of updating? So yeah.
Yep, I think it's great. I would love to see that.
Yeah.
Because like updates, first of all, updating just just one but not the other is really strange. Like, and it's also strange that update modules also happens to mean update core, right? And so there's a lot of weird inconsistencies that happen.
You can still select which ones to update because we have the checkboxes. The confusion is that we are listing all types of projects within each one of those pages, which is supposed to be explicit to each one of those project types, which is like the whole confusion. Like we say update modules, but we include core and themes and layouts, and we do that same thing in the other places. It's just confusing user experience.
Yep. All right. Looks like Jen also put into the agenda a helpful list for discussion for next week, possibly. Jen apparently is interested in advocating 15 different issues. So perhaps we can start with one, and then as we complete one, then she'll be able to take on another. She'll also probably want to use this list for discussion for next week to solicit volunteers to see if we could parallelize any of this work and get advocates on any of these other issues.
Right.
But I won't go over all of them today since I would just read them. So we'll do that next week.
Yep.
That's it for the 118 update. We have a section in here. We're running over time, but I'll say we have a section here for initiative updates. Luke is not around to give us an update on the Ready to Wear initiative. However, telemetry, I think it's worth noting that Tim has some things to say on telemetry.
Sure, I'll be really fast and just say, still confirming this with Jeff, but I'm under the impression that he just doesn't have time right at the moment. So I'm hopefully going to step in and help move this forward. Nate and I and Gregory, I think, was there. We did during Backdrop Live, we had a nice discussion and got a bunch of brain dump from Nate in terms of things that we could use to move forward. And my next step is to sort of update the issue queue and with, excuse me, a better status update of where we're at and maybe outline next steps. So I'll try to, more to come in future meetings. That's all on that. Yep.
And that's great news. The entire last release, we unfortunately didn't have progress on telemetry, so I really appreciate the passing of the torch to get that moving along, because it still is like the initiative that's been voted upon and approved is like saying, yes, this is super important for us as a community, and it's great to have some new leadership pushing that forward. All right, that's it for the entirety of the product updates. And you guys have already talked about meta issues, and
one more announcement. I'd like to, I'd like as many people as possible to be aware that this open source day is a week from today. from the Grace Hopper Conference. And we've got 3 mentors assigned to work with us. And then we will supposedly be getting a bunch of volunteers from that conference that will be sort of sprinting or contributing in our issue queue, again, a week from today. A couple of the mentors are already in the issue queue, writing some test pull requests. They started coming in yesterday. So one, I want people to be aware of that, be friendly and helpful to these new folks who are showing up in the issue queue. I've asked them to sort of identify themselves when they do their first post, and just to let us know that they're there. But also we're pointing them at the good first issue tags to help them find issues to work on. And I'd love help triaging those. Jen and I have spent some time going through some of the existing ones and either untagging them if they're no longer good first issues, or updating them with additional information. I mean, if you see a good first issue, we got to keep in mind that these are also, like, it's one thing for a good first issue for somebody that's like used Backdrop and never contributed. These are folks that are completely new to our community and haven't used Backdrop before. So sometimes a little extra information might be helpful to them. So I think one of the things Jen and I have done is added some screenshots to a couple of the issues that might not normally be required, but we thought would be helpful for these folks. So those are the kinds of things you could do to help. Or just if you come across an issue without that tag, but that would be a good first issue, please help us tag that, because I don't know. I mean, there's several, I want to say this conference has like 30,000 participants. I don't know how many of them are participating in this sprint day, but they have been very actively tweeting about it and trying to recruit people to work specifically on Backdrop. And so it's, again, I'm making up numbers, but it could be that they show up with 20 volunteers to write pull requests, and we need to have things for them to work on. And also, if you're available that day, just to pay attention to the issue queue. Jen and Nate and I and Gregory and I are all designated reps. So we will be like in Slack with these folks, helping them out and answering questions. But if we had in Zula, well, no,
or is it Slack?
They've actually set up a special Slack channel just for their event. So I think that's where they want people to be. We may direct them to Zulip as well. I don't know, but certainly, it would be great if people were available, like to review their work quickly that day in the issue queue, because as I said, my goal, I'm hopeful that it would be great if we could get 1 or 2 of them. That it's not, for me, it's not so much about the work that's going to get that done that day, but the possibility of maybe somebody enjoying working with us and coming back and helping us in the future. And that's more likely if they have a good experience next Thursday. So to the extent that we can like respond to their questions and review their work and give them feedback quickly, I think will say a lot about their likelihood of coming back and helping us in the future.
Yeah.
So that's it for that.
Excellent. And that is next Thursday? Is that what you said?
It's the 1st, which I think is next Thursday, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Sounds great. Anything else?
Nope.
I love that Tim's always like the just one more thing person,
Oh.
which is always good news.
I want to say something then. One more thing.
Okay, cool.
If we're doing the open source day next week, and we're also doing a meeting that includes discussion about 1.18, are those going to be in conflict with each other?
It's a good point.
Especially if like Greg, Nate, Greg, Tim, and Jen are all 3 going to be in the issue queue, popping in and out.
Yeah, so I always have 3 monitors in front of me, and one of them is dedicated to my comms. So that explains why I'm so prompt. So anyways, I'll have a Slack and Zulip open while we're doing that. But our meetings are going to be 1 or 2 hours, right? This whole thing is an event that is happening throughout the day. So we might go
Right.
away, have our meetings, and then return. And we can
And
let
that
the
won't be-
folks
okay.
know that, yeah.
Yeah, see, that might work. The problem is I just have no idea how this day is going to go. And I have mentored at large sprints before at DrupalCon. And I'm envisioning a situation where it could be, Gregory, that we are like deep in helping them with issues, and we can't say, oh, we're going to go away for a meeting. So we should
Not
be
even for
prepared.
an hour. We might need to go to the toilet or have some.
Yeah, but that's going to the toilet is not enough. And it's all three of us at once, right?
Yeah, sure. So,
So
maybe one of us needs to stay. Yes. Yeah, sure. I understand.
Well, or we need to think about doing that a different day. I don't know.
Yeah, if it comes down to teaching new contributors or having their discussion about 118 features, I would take the contributors. And
Right.
so if we're in a Zoom or some kind of other video conferencing, teaching the contributors hands-on and we're occupied, then we can also, those that are available can have the discussion, but we may decide, let's do it again the subsequent week just to make up for that time.
Yeah.
I
Sounds
think
good.
that's fair. That would be fair to go ahead and do it next week. And then if some of us aren't there, to either just follow that up later or something.
Yep.
Yeah, and to be honest, I'm going to have plenty of opportunities to give my input, even if I'm not there. So I'll find ways.
Yep.
All right.
But thanks for bringing that up, Jason,
Cool.
as being a concern.
Sure.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining the meeting then. And again, thank you to everybody that attended Backdrop Live and Tim for being our premier organizer to make such an amazing event happen. Congratulations everyone on the 117 release. We're happy to get the 117.1 release out. There's a Grace Hopper conference happening. It's
So many things.
Yeah, it's great. It's wonderful. I'm feeling just really optimistic and positive. So, all
Yeah,
right.
cool.
Well, thanks everybody. We'll see you guys on the internet.
Thanks. See ya.
Bye.